be producing those much more frequently, every day, multiple times a day, as opposed to YouTube where you can get away with once a week. So that's kind of following up on the last presentation, but also very relevant here where, this triangle, as much as we hate to say it, does vary based on your platform. Fast content means, fast on YouTube, you need to be producing a video a week. That is basically the minimum at this point. Minimum. Yeah, the bare minimum on YouTube at this point is 1 video a week. If you're on Facebook, fast is a very different cadence, where now all of a sudden you're producing at least a video a day, if not more. Cheap content, like Stephanie said, if you're on Facebook, it better be cheap enough that you're okay, funding it yourself with getting 0 revenue for a while, for the foreseeable future, since those deals are still very few and far between. Cheap on YouTube, in success, you're able to afford, $1,000 to $2,000 on an episode, but that's in the highest tiers of success. That's, a couple million views off of that video. If you're looking at success kind of with lower view counts, it also depends on the vertical you're in. Cars and food content monetize at a much higher rate than gaming. Family content is going to optimize and monetize a lot better than a lot of your vlog and prank channels. So again, that's where kind of that cheap falls into place. And then we just talked about good.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So like I said, we're gonna go through a few factors here. We're gonna start with goal setting, and we're gonna end with actually getting out of your own business. All right. So a brief preface to everything else that we're going to walk through is digital is not made for perfection. And this is something that we talk to a lot of our consulting clients about. They want to create a new series or a new format for whatever platform they're looking for. Whether it's mostly YouTube and Facebook still, but sometimes it's sometimes it's a Snapchat series or whatever. But the point is not to be perfect out of the gate. The point is to create content and iterate. So what happens a lot of times when we work with especially bigger clients is that they'll create something, they'll create like a pilot for a series, and it'll go through 8 layers of approval, and it'll go from department to department. And when they started making it, like 3 months ago, it was relevant to what was going on YouTube or what was going on in their vertical. And then when it actually comes out, it's way behind the times. It's been shuffled around their company so many times that it's like unrecognizable from what they started with. And then they somehow have to produce another one. And that becomes like this impossible task. So the point is to not be afraid to not be perfect the first time. The point is to start to get content out there as quickly as you can, and then iterate from there. One of the biggest things that I think gets overlooked a lot of times is that on digital, it's also one of your primary goals is always to win over your audience, is to appeal to what your audience is looking for. And you don't really know what your audience is looking for until there's something out there for them to react to. So it's really critical to start where you are, start with the team you have, start with the resources you have, start with the knowledge that you have, and then iterate. One of the best, that's not to say though that you can't start with some knowledge base, right? You shouldn't be completely throwing things in the dark. One of the most important things that we can tell people to do when they're developing an idea, when they're starting a format, is watch what's out there. We talk to so many of our consulting clients, and we ask them what their favorite YouTube channels are, and they're like, well, I check out the trending tab sometimes, and that's not gonna cut it in a lot of cases. If you want to create a food series, watch every piece of food content you can. There are 20 sub-verticals of food content out there. You should know that and understand that, and you should know what the tropes of those verticals are and those sub-verticals. Absolutely, there are tools that are out there that can kind of help you parse through some of the big picture data, but there's really nothing to replace you or some member of your team actually getting into the type of content that you want to produce and watch it. Become a fan of it and understand why other people are fans of it, because that sets you up in the best way possible to put a good foot forward when you're creating content on your own.
And this is especially true on YouTube, which is an ecosystem unto itself. Facebook is very much embedded in the events of the real world. It's all built in that idea of a news feed. But on YouTube, it is a very self-contained ecosystem, a bubble with a language, memes, and catchphrases all its own. And if you're not staying relevant and up to date on what kind of is culturally appropriate for your independent vertical, then you're going to put a big target on your back and showcase how out of touch you are with these audiences that you're looking to capitalize on.
Yeah, they'll know. They're really embedded, so you need to be embedded too.
Yes, it's one of those things, like it takes our show about 2 weeks to produce a video, and in 2 weeks, the memes and catchphrases and jokes that are really relevant with our audience are already dead. So not only we are at the very tail end and they know to expect this of us, which is good, but it's one of those things that, like, again, to reinforce the idea of it needs to be fast content to turn around, and you need to actually stay very culturally relevant with the now of your audience watching. We're a good example of, like, the most extreme that you can push it.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you're thinking about, what you're doing, it's also not, just, hey, where is there an opening in this market? Where is there, what is my general interest? But why do I think that my content is going to be just as, if not more relevant than everything else I see out there? What is the goal, and what's the intention behind what you're trying to do? Again, we sit down with a lot of teams and we ask them first and foremost, okay, great, you wanna launch a series, you want to do a show on your channel. What are your goals? What do you want to get out of it? And they're like, well, I think I want people to watch it, and that's cool, but everybody wants everyone to watch everything that gets put online, right? You have to have an intention and a purpose behind it, and that doesn't have to be some sort of grand altruistic purpose. We talk to a lot of people, and what it ultimately boils down to is they're like, I want a fan base. I want to build a personal brand. I want people to know my name, and I want to build a fan base. And that's okay. That's completely fine to have as a goal. You just have to know that, own it from the beginning, and then create a strategy around it to actually achieve it. So whether you want to build a community, or another big one is I want to teach people something. I want people to understand something. I want to share something with people that I don't see currently represented. And that's a really good one. What you don't see represented is an opportunity. So we always try to encourage people to come at it from a different angle, fuse two things that they've never seen fused before, understand where they can differentiate and create something that's going to be different and of value. And every once in a while, we also run into creators who, don't actually want to stay on YouTube forever, and they already know that going in. Musicians are a great example of this, where they're like, actually, I really want to end up on Spotify, or I really want to end up on, in a record label contract or something like that. And really, they want to build a big presence on YouTube, but they already know they want to move it somewhere else. But again, that impacts their strategy from the very outset. Other things to just kind of keep in mind when you're setting goals, when you're trying to differentiate. Know what you want to communicate. Know what your audience's interests are. A lot of this goes back to, again, immersing yourself in the audience that you actually want to connect with. If you actually become a member of these communities, you have immediate buy-in. There's no trying to hack what gamers actually like, or trying to trick people who are interested in makeup tutorials into watching your beauty videos. If you are a member of that community, you already know what they're interested in, what they appreciate. So it's how do you reach them? What are you going to do to differentiate your content, but also make it vibe with what's already out there, and then making sure that whatever decisions you can make them indefinitely.
And that last point is really important, that indefinitely idea, because YouTube and digital video in general is a treadmill. You are constantly running, videos, and you have to stay perpetually relevant. I mean, for us, we've been doing our main channel, Game Theory, for 7 years now. And it's been, let's talk about the science, math, and psychology of video games every week for 7 years. We have hundreds of episodes at this point. If you're a vlogger and you're vlogging every day, that's thousands of episodes once you're 3 years in. It's 1,000 episodes. So it's one of those things that if you are designing content on these platforms, it's something that has to be able to remain consistent enough to maintain an audience across multiple years in success, but also flexible enough that you're able to stay relevant with the changing times and the changing tastes of an ever-evolving audience who is either growing older along with you, or an influx of new audiences who are coming to the platform for the first time and just discovering you.
Exactly. So this slide, we won't dwell on this for any length of time. This is just to give you an example from our channel. So we can put ourselves up for roast here a little bit. When we're thinking about what differentiates us and going through this goal setting process, we're thinking about these kinds of things. So we're thinking about, what does our audience care about? What are they interested in terms of actual topics, whether that's gaming topics, pop culture topics, again, like Matthew mentioned, the memes that are going on YouTube. How are we different from what's already out there? We look very different from every other gaming channel out there, and that's with intention, right? We don't want to be easily replaceable. It doesn't mean we have to make our format crazy complicated or something like that, but it's visually differentiated, it's differentiated in our style and tone, and that's something that we know we can sustain, but it's also something that we've kind of tried to carve out for ourselves. And then, like Matthew mentioned, again, whatever your format is, whatever vertical you're in, you have to be able to do that for the long run. And audiences really don't like bait and switch on any of these platforms, but especially YouTube. People like what they like what they've come to expect. In other talks, we talk a lot about how people hate clicking on black boxes. If they go to your channel, they want to know exactly what they're going to get every time, and so consistency is incredibly important. Even to the extent that, where you used to see more channels where there were multiple formats or multiple hosts across the channels, across a single channel, that is becoming a much more difficult model to sustain, because having multiple voices, multiple faces, and multiple formats on channels can actually work against you. And there are algorithmic reasons behind that, but audience expectation certainly also plays into it. People often come to a channel wanting to know that it's one format, one host, and it's extremely consistent. So this, this consistency and longevity is really important.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again, going back to the idea of hacking the algorithm, or at least working with the algorithm, with the content that you're producing. At this point, especially on YouTube, YouTube is incentivizing channels. The algorithms are actively incentivizing channels that are 100% consistent. So are they? There goes my microphone. That's okay. Are they consistent from a personality standpoint? If they're consistent around a personality standpoint, great. Then I'm coming to your content every single day because you are the consistent host that I can rely on. But other channels that are talking about a lot of different formats, YouTube will actually punish channels where people won't click on a high percentage of your videos. So think about it. If I'm coming to your channel to watch you cover the latest Marvel superhero movie, and I watch you for superhero movie content, but you're a general film channel, and I'm not watching the things that you cover that aren't superhero channels, then your channel will actually suffer in the algorithm, and YouTube will make you less visible to subscribers with each subsequent upload that they don't click on. You're basically telling, or that's that viewer basically telling YouTube, I'm no longer interested in this channel, and they become burned out in the algorithm. It's subscriber burnout, right? And so it's not enough to be like, I'm a film channel, but I'm a film channel that focuses on superhero movies or anime content or things like that. That is the level of granularity that you're looking for at this point, and the level of consistency that YouTube is really rewarding.
So it's really important to define your sphere ahead of time. If you want to be a general film channel, that's fine. If you want to be a general gaming channel, that's also fine. But you know your sphere and just stick to it.
And that's where programming strategy comes in.
So it's important to not only just know what your goals are in general, know how you're going to think about differentiating, but actually be able to measure what you're trying to achieve. So set your goals and then actually set goals that can be measured. So again, when we're talking about teams that we're working with who are looking to launch a new channel or a format, one of the problems that we run into is either that they set goals that they can't actually come back to, they can't actually quantify in any way, or if you talk to any given member of the team, they think that the goals of the channel or of any given piece of content are different. So it's important to have everybody on the same page about what you're actually going to measure and then to actually measure it. So depending on what you're going for on any given piece of content, you're going to be setting a different goal. And it's the kind of the take home here is that you can't accomplish all of these things with one piece of content. You're never going to be able to set 5 goals and achieve all of them. There's no one perfect piece of content that's going to get you everything you want. So you have to pick and choose. Some pieces of content, like for our channels, sometimes we just cover a franchise or a movie or something like that because we're like, this is going to be a huge audience draw. We are going for a views play here, and we know that ahead of time. We're very cognizant of it, and everything that goes into that episode and the programming around it is set to get people to watch or to get people to watch more. Sometimes we're driving towards new types of audiences or new communities, and we want to convert them to fans of what we do. And so for that, we're going to be looking to measure subscribers per 1,000 views. This is a metric that we've been using for years to measure our efficiency at actually converting a casual viewer into someone who's going to be a long-term fan of our content. Not all of those are going to work together in every episode. If you're looking at other platforms like Facebook, especially, you're going to be looking at entirely different metrics. So if you want to super serve your fans, you're going to be looking at engagement. If you're going to, if you're only on Facebook, you're definitely focused on comments. You're focused on shares, big time. You're looking at different metrics, but you need to understand what's going to be a view getter versus what's going to be shareable versus what's going to spark people to actually have a conversation. Going in knowing what your content is supposed to achieve makes it easier for you to actually come out with something that feels and actually is successful. So just to draw a few examples, again, from the stuff that we do, we have lots of different goals, and we set up what is actually a programming strategy when we go into thinking about what content goes onto our channels, right? So different content sets out to achieve different goals. A lot of times it's to reach a new audience, and for that, we've recently tapped into early 2000s cartoons and animation, and that's been huge. It's opened up a door to an audience base that we never had access to before. But we know that those are almost all new people watching that content. They might not be the same people as our core fan base. So if we cover content like that, we also know we need to go back and make sure that the core people who are already on our channel are also getting what they came for. So we also cover Deadpool. And then sometimes we do experimental content, right? So we're trying to tap into something that's popular online, like Poppy. Or we're trying to tap into something that's newsworthy, like issues around the Emoji Movie. So we make sure that in any given calendar month or within a given set of time for our channel, that we have an even balance or the appropriate balance of all of these types of content so that we are reaching out for new audiences, we're serving the audience we already have, and we're always trying to experiment to find out what other formats or what other types of topics might also be interesting, either to people who already watch us or to people we might not have tapped into yet.
And the nice thing about going in with those clear KPIs when you make the video is now all of a sudden we're able to optimize our calls to action within the video itself towards those goals, right? So if our goal with a new piece of content like Poppy, which we're like, hey, this isn't in our audience's wheelhouse, but we're hoping to tap into new audiences as a result of it and get into new suggested video feeds, now all of a sudden we're able to optimize the call to action in that video around subscribe to the channel, check us out, if you like this video, you're gonna like these other videos and keep watching. So we're able to optimize exactly what we're telling the audience to do and how we're trying to leverage that video into our wider programming strategy.
Yeah. So good content is great, but good content still needs to be made in a way that works with the platforms that you're on, and it still needs to be made in a way where there's an actual strategy behind it. So I guess you could say that this cliche is still sort of true, but actually it really relies on where you are, what you're doing, and the audience you're trying to reach. So really quickly, to round out this section, I wanted to talk a little bit about logistics, since this is another big issue that really comes up, especially with our larger consulting clients. And we work with some of the biggest media companies and biggest traditional media companies in the world. And we see this issue come up in every single one of them. Literally 100% of the time. So they're slowly switching models of how they actually structure their teams when they're trying to create especially new series or new formats specifically for digital. So where we've previously seen teams split up is into silos. And if you've worked at one of these companies, you're probably really familiar with this kind of structure where you have the content team, you have the social team, you have the analytics team, you have the marketing team, and the brand team. And all of them sit in completely different spaces. They don't talk to each other. And they might hand off drafts of content or finished pieces of content. But between the teams, a lot of times, or the vast majority of the time, no one knows what anybody else is really doing when they hand off content. They don't know what anyone else's goal is when they get the content, and they have no idea how to set each other up for success within their own organization, or even really to communicate in the same language. And so where we're seeing people have much more success and where we sort of encourage people to shift whenever possible, even if you'd have a really small team, or this also extends to much, much larger teams, is de-silo and create production level teams. So putting everyone who needs to handle each piece of the series or production into the same room so that they can actually speak the same language, set goals together, understand what each other's roles are, and then actually execute a given production based on that team structure, as opposed to blindly handing off content to the next person in the assembly line, which really doesn't work in the vast majority of cases in digital.
It also helps because art departments are notoriously bad at creating thumbnails.
It's true.
So you want someone who's digital, and also thumbnails tend to be like disgusting for art departments to work on because they see them as like the actual best practices for clickability in thumbnails are just like, from a design aesthetic, appalling to an art department. So as much as you can keep those in-house, the better.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And this goes exactly to this slide as well. So actually getting everyone in the same room so that they can talk about what the goals of the content are. Different people on your team should not have different goals. Everyone should be working toward the same overall goal, and everyone's individual role should fit directly into the overall goal of the content. It's okay to overlap. We actually encourage some redundancy. The next slide is actually a picture of how our team functions. It has a lot of redundancy. So we actually overlap roles quite a bit. What this does is it gives everyone on the team an appreciation for some adjacent role. They don't have to perform redundant roles every day, but understanding what other people on your team do, how they need to do their job well, and what they need to be equipped with to get the most out of the work that they're doing actually makes a massive difference in the efficiency of the overall production and the success and the actual outcomes in terms of success. Great. So again, just to flash this up as an example, this is our team structure. There's a lot on this slide. What you really need to just know and pay attention to is that everything in green overlaps with somebody else's job. We have an extremely lean team. One of the ways that we're able to flex in order to take on more work as these digital ecosystems ebb and flow, we are able to take on new projects or new responsibilities, is by having backups for the majority of our team. You can see that no one person does analytics, no one person does video packaging. There are a couple people who have like very specific roles, but in large part what you should take away from this is that people know what other people do and what they need to do, so they can speak the same language across multiple team members. Okay, cool.
Okay, and I'm just going to fly through this because I think we've talked about a lot of this already, but we've mentioned this in the past, and I'm sure I hope that you're all aware of this by this point. Anytime you're making a business off of any of these digital platforms, be it YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, or whatever, you're building your business off of someone else's property, right? And that other business can choose to evict you at almost any given point in time. Sometimes, they're working with their own business goals, their own kind of KPIs, and sometimes that works great for the type of content that you're looking to produce. A lot of times it doesn't. And so really you have to make sure that going into these businesses and into the digital creation process, that you want to stay flexible and that you're prepared that you're prepared to be building your business on quicksand in a lot of ways. And there are definitely ways that you can kind of prep as you get ready to do digital video on any of these platforms. And we mentioned it at the beginning, but this is getting a little bit more granular. Testing and iterating your content accordingly. So Obviously, there are definitely different ways to do this. First is video-to-video testing. Every piece of content that you upload onto your channel, onto your Facebook page, whatever, should have not only a KPI, but also a test that's being run on it. Hey, for the next 10 videos, I want to do something about, I want to test out how many boxes I should include in the end card, or what colors those boxes should be, or what color theme should my thumbnail have. Should it have text? Should it not have text? And conscientiously doing that with every piece of content that you upload means that at the end of those 10 videos, at the end of those 2 weeks, you're able to go back, analyze the performance, and optimize from there. Remember, it's not about any one piece of content being perfect, but it's about iterating, experimenting, looking at the data, and then iterating accordingly. So take every piece of content that you have as an opportunity to experiment and learn more about the platform and the way that your audience responds to your content. If you have the budgets and are able to do this, ad-supported testing is even cleaner. Facebook and YouTube both make it very easy for you to A/B test different videos, so you can optimize for things like, is my title and thumbnail clickable? Is this the type of content that's packaged in a way that's going to get people to want to engage with it? And so that's another much cleaner type of experiment that you can do in small scale, and then, once you and test it out with like about 500, 1,000 views by doing a small ad spend, and then all of a sudden when you publish it, and you can rest assured that that video is as well optimized for audience behavior as possible.
It's also worth mentioning that YouTube is actually rolling out features that make this kind of iterative testing a lot easier, specifically for titles and thumbnails. Their impressions and click-through rates feature is great. We've been using it for a few weeks now, and I've been really pleased with how it's streamlined that specific process. So look out for that because it's in beta now and it's coming out soon.
Yeah, for years we've been asking YouTube to come up with some metrics that allow us to test just the packaging of content, title and thumbnail. That is coming out.
They're sort of getting there.
They're slowly rolling it out. It's the impressions and click-through per impression metrics. If you don't have it already, it should be coming hopefully in the next couple months. We've talked about this, how you need to stay flexible with the algorithm. YouTube started off as a short-form piece of content or a short-term content factory, like Facebook is now. It then optimized for watch session. It then optimized for even longer watch sessions. So again, make sure that you're staying aware of overall macro platform trends in order to keep your content flexible and stay relevant with, hacking the algorithm, but more so staying relevant with the type of content that you're producing. Also, this is all just about optimizing your overall formats. So remember, first and foremost, that YouTube specifically is the second largest search engine online. And so it's one of those things that, as much as you can, you need to stay searchable and suggestible against other relevant content in your genre. And people forget this all the time. They think that, if I create good content, that it'll just get seen, but that's not the case. You can make sure that it's getting seen in higher numbers of impressions by making sure that you're riding off of existing trends on the platform. Using search engine optimization to your advantage by capitalizing off of those platform-specific words. The last presentation talked about buddy workouts or outfit of the days when it comes to beauty content. These are some other easy ones like Black Panther, prom, which are more seasonal, and then other things like nail art and holographic stuff. Also, sustainable content needs to be efficient. So we've been talking about this a lot, but you want to be able to think in terms of your content for the infinite future. In success, this channel will exist until YouTube decides to roll over and die. And so can you produce content that is quick and easy and repeatable? Ideally, for your own sanity, try to do it in a way that's able to be batch shot and that it's evergreen content. So that way you have stockpile episodes that you can roll out, and then that leaves you more time and ability to focus on more relevant topics in between that are more turnkey for you to focus on, while still providing you with enough content to fill out your programming strategy accordingly. And then lastly, we've mentioned this a couple times, but it can iterate and optimize. And Nintendo, for being such a huge company, has actually done a really good job of creating formats that are simple enough that allow them to iterate on a week-to-week basis. And we have a minute left. Okay. So talk about how we get out of this business.
Yeah. In a minute, you're going to learn how to actually leave. Great. You've built a lot of great videos online. You're doing really well. For a lot of people, in a lot of cases, that's not really the end goal. You want to look into alternative revenue options. Obviously, there's a whole slew. You can have a full presentation on any of these, but this is the direction that you start to build these concentric circles around just your core content in many different ways. Some of the most trendy right now are live, certainly, and then a lot of people, since YouTube is becoming less and less stable, are also shifting to that more stable fan funding model, which can also be pretty reliable. Thinking ahead, you want to build your business in a way that enables you to exit your business the way you want to. So we actually talk to people about this all the time. Usually it comes up with individual YouTubers who are like, man, I've built this business. I've been on YouTube for like 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and man, I wish I had built it differently so that I could get on with something else, or that they could grow and iterate differently in a way that isn't so reliant on their own time. So think ahead about this kind of thing. If you want to just have your channel live and die by you as a person or an individual, great, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But eventually you are, in success, you do reach a point where it's going to be too hard for you to just keep extending your time, and there are only 24 hours in a day. So there are other ways that you can also exit. You can take a step back, you can replace yourself, but if you're going to do that, you need a format that doesn't rely completely on your own personality. And from there, you scale up. You can focus on building out other community efforts. You can also build a business that you ultimately want to sell. Maybe you want to create an awesome IP that you then sell to a major media company. That's a big strategy right now. But in order to do that, you have to have, again, in mind who the business is relying on. Is it scalable, and can it go on forever, which makes it an appealing acquisition target. And there's really only one format where you want to actually, focus on that scale out, which is an IPO, which we've never seen before, but I would be really excited to see it. And that is pretty much everything. We're totally out of time.
There you go.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.